Hey there, history lovers. I'm Clyde Chester, and welcome to History of United States. This is where we tell American history the way it actually happened, not the sanitized textbook version, but the real stories, the weird ones, the uncomfortable ones, the ones that got buried for decades because they didn't fit the narrative. We dig into the bizarre incidents, the hidden scandals, and the complicated truths about the people and moments that shaped America. Because real history is messy, and that's exactly what makes it worth telling. If you're ready for history that's honest and compelling, hit that subscribe button. I'm Clyde Chester. Let's get into it.
Greta Garbo. On the screen, she was untouchable, the beauty of silent films whose face alone could command an audience. Yet at the height of her power, Greta Garbo did something almost unthinkable. She walked away. Born in Stockholm in 1905, Garbo was discovered by director Moritz Stiller, who brought her to Hollywood in the mid-1920s. Her exotic beauty and magnetic stillness set her apart from the lively, fast-talking stars of the era. By the end of the decade, she had become one of MGM's biggest assets, a global sensation whose films drew millions. Through the 1930s, she dominated the silver screen with roles that balanced elegance and melancholy. Nicknamed the Swedish Sphinx, she embodied mystery, refusing interviews and guarding her private life. Audiences only saw what she allowed them to see, a deliberate creation of myth. Then, in 1941, after completing the romantic comedy Two-Faced Woman, Garbo stunned Hollywood. The film was poorly received, and she quietly announced her retirement at just 36 years old. Offers kept coming, but she never returned to film. Unlike most stars, she didn't fade because studios stopped calling. She chose silence. "Garbo talks" had been the famous tagline when she entered the world of sound films. But in her own words, she later admitted, "I never said, 'I want to be alone.' I only said, 'I want to be left alone.' There is all the difference." For the rest of her life, Garbo lived in near seclusion in New York City, walking the streets anonymously, a ghost of Hollywood's golden past. Her withdrawal was not a scandal or a tragedy, but a rare act of self-possession, a star choosing obscurity over spotlight. Greta Garbo's disappearance from Hollywood was not forced. It was her decision, a reminder that even in a system built on illusion, some stars found power in walking away. Clara Bow. She was Hollywood's first true it girl, the living embodiment of the Roaring '20s. Clara Bow lit up the screen with a carefree energy that spoke to a generation desperate for fun after the Great War. Yet, just as quickly as she rose, she vanished, retreating into silence while still in her prime. Clara Bow was born in 1905 in Brooklyn into a world of hardship. Poverty and a troubled childhood weighed heavily on her, but she escaped through the movies, dreaming of the silver screen. In 1921, she won a nationwide contest, earning her first break in film. Soon, her lively eyes, infectious smile, and undeniable charm made her the star every studio wanted. By the mid-1920s, she had become the most popular actress in America. Her role in It, 1927, cemented her as the ultimate flapper, a symbol of modern freedom and female independence. Audiences adored her, but behind the glamour, Bow was overwhelmed. The arrival of sound films in the late 1920s only added pressure. Though her voice was fine, she hated the new system of rigid studio control. Rumors, scandals, and cruel gossip from the press also took their toll, painting her as wild and unstable. In truth, she was battling deep anxiety and exhaustion. By 1933, at just 28 years old, Clara Bow retired from Hollywood. She married cowboy star Rex Bell and retreated to a Nevada ranch, leaving behind the bright lights for a life of seclusion. When asked about her departure, she once said with heartbreaking honesty, "All I want is to be left alone and to have a nice, quiet life." For the rest of her days, Clara Bow lived far from the public eye, her final years shadowed by mental health struggles. But to history, she remains frozen in time, the girl who gave Hollywood its first taste of youth, freedom, and fire before vanishing into silence. Frances Farmer. Her talent was undeniable, her beauty striking, and her spirit famously defiant. Frances Farmer arrived in Hollywood with all the makings of a star. Yet her story became one of the most haunting tales of the Golden Age, a career full of promise that ended in disappearance and confinement. Born in Seattle in 1913, Frances was brilliant and outspoken from an early age. She studied journalism and philosophy before turning to acting, winning a talent competition that brought her to Hollywood in the mid-1930s. Almost immediately, she stood out. With roles in films like Come and Get It and Rhythm on the Range, critics hailed her as one of the most exciting new faces of her generation. But Frances Farmer was not a woman who played by studio rules. She disliked publicity stunts and openly criticized the Hollywood system, calling it shallow and false. Her rebellious spirit clashed with studio executives who wanted compliant stars. By the early 1940s, tensions grew and her career began to stall. At the same time, her personal struggles deepened. Reports of erratic behavior led to highly publicized arrests, and soon she was institutionalized for years. Newspapers exploited her troubles, turning her into a cautionary tale rather than offering understanding. Reflecting on her Hollywood experience, she once said, "I think Hollywood is a place where they'll pay you $1,000 for a kiss and 50 cents for your soul." By the time Frances resurfaced in the 1950s, her Hollywood stardom was gone. She worked briefly in theater and television, but lived the rest of her life largely away from the spotlight, passing in 1970. Her disappearance from Hollywood was not just a personal tragedy, it was also an indictment of an industry that did not know how to handle a woman who refused to conform. Frances Farmer remains a reminder of the cost of defiance in a system built on control. George Reeves. For millions of children in the 1950s, George Reeves was a hero. As Superman, he soared across television screens, embodying truth and justice. Yet behind the cape, Reeves wrestled with the weight of typecasting and personal disappointment. His sudden and tragic end left Hollywood with questions that have never been fully answered. Born George Kiefer Brewer in Iowa, in 1914, he pursued acting after studying at Pasadena Playhouse. He caught his first big break in 1939 with a small role in Gone with the Wind, playing one of the Tarleton twins. Through the 1940s, he worked steadily, but rarely in leading parts. Everything changed in 1951 when Reeves was cast as Superman in the new television series Adventures of Superman. The show was an instant success, and Reeves became a household name. Children adored him, but the role soon became a prison. Casting directors saw him only as Superman, and serious film work dried up. Reeves himself admitted that he worried his career was finished before it ever began. On June 16, 1959, Reeves was found dead in his Los Angeles home from a gunshot wound. Official reports ruled it as self-inflicted, but rumors of foul play spread quickly. He had been engaged, involved in complex relationships, and had ties to powerful Hollywood figures. Friends insisted he seemed optimistic about his future. The press ran headlines like, "Superman's death shocks the nation." Fans were left stunned, unable to reconcile their invincible hero with such an ending. George Reeves's disappearance from Hollywood wasn't a slow fading, but an abrupt, jarring silence. He remains one of the Golden Age's most enduring mysteries, a man remembered forever as Superman, yet never able to escape him. Montgomery Clift. He was the very definition of the sensitive leading man, a star whose quiet intensity helped usher in a new style of acting in Hollywood. Montgomery Clift seemed destined for a long and brilliant career. Yet behind his striking performances was a man slowly unraveling, whose withdrawal from the spotlight puzzled and saddened the industry. Born in Omaha in 1920, Clift began acting on stage as a teenager and quickly gained a reputation as one of Broadway's finest young talents. Hollywood soon called, and by the late 1940s, he was starring in films like Red River and A Place in the Sun. Critics marveled at his naturalistic style, which influenced a generation of actors, including Marlon Brando and James Dean. But Clift's promising career was forever altered in 1956, when he suffered a near-fatal car accident after leaving a dinner party at Elizabeth Taylor's home. His face was badly injured, requiring reconstructive surgery. Though he returned to acting, the pain, both physical and emotional, never left him. From that point on, Clift's performances carried a haunting vulnerability. While he gave memorable roles in films like The Misfits and Judgment at Nuremberg, his once rising career slowed as personal struggles mounted. He became increasingly reclusive, turning down projects and avoiding the public eye. A close friend later described him as the longest self-infliction in Hollywood history. Not in the literal sense, but as a man who slowly retreated from life. By the time of his passing in 1966, Clift had become a ghost of his earlier self, a star who vanished not in a single moment, but piece by piece. Montgomery Clift's story is not just one of loss, but of lasting influence. His acting style reshaped Hollywood, leaving behind a legacy that continues long after his light dimmed. Jean Seberg. Her face defined a new kind of cinema, fresh, natural, and modern. Jean Seberg was barely a teenager when she was lifted from obscurity and thrust into international stardom. Yet her life became one of the most tragic vanishing acts of the Golden Age, undone not by scandal alone, but by powerful forces working against her. Born in Marshalltown, Iowa in 1938, Seberg was only 17 when director Otto Preminger selected her from thousands of hopefuls to star in St. Joan, 1957. The film was not a success, but her striking presence caught the attention of European directors. 2 years later, she achieved immortality when Jean-Luc Godard cast her in Breathless, 1960. With her cropped blonde hair and modern style, she became the face of the French New Wave. Hollywood welcomed her back in the early 1960s, but her career soon collided with politics. Seberg was outspoken in her support for civil rights and associated with activist groups, including the Black Panther Party. This drew the attention of the FBI, which began monitoring her closely under its COINTELPRO program. In 1970, newspapers printed false, government-planted stories about her personal life, smearing her reputation. The stress and harassment devastated her career and personal well-being. Projects dried up, and she found herself increasingly isolated. Reflecting on her torment, one critic wrote, "She had been chosen by fate, first to be lifted up, then to be cruelly destroyed." Jean Seberg's final years were marked by pain and withdrawal from Hollywood. By 1979, she had all but disappeared from the screen. A brilliant career erased not by her lack of talent, but by forces far larger than herself. Her story remains one of Hollywood's darkest reminders that even a star shining brightly can be extinguished by powers working in the shadows. Dorothy Dandridge. She had the voice, the beauty, and the presence to captivate any audience, yet Hollywood repeatedly failed to embrace her fully. Dorothy Dandridge broke barriers as one of the first black actresses to achieve major film stardom. But the opportunities were few and the pressures enormous. Her eventual disappearance from Hollywood was as tragic as it was preventable. Born in Cleveland in 1922, Dandridge began performing at a young age with her sister in a dance and singing act. Her talent was undeniable, and by the 1940s she had moved to Hollywood, hoping to achieve the same level of fame as her white counterparts. Early film appearances were often limited to minor roles or musical numbers, reflecting the systemic racism of the era. Everything changed in 1954, when she was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actress for her performance in Carmen Jones. She became the first African-American woman to receive such recognition. Yet, despite this groundbreaking achievement, substantial roles remained scarce, and studios hesitated to cast her in mainstream productions. Her personal life was also fraught with difficulty. Marriages, financial struggles, and the pressures of being a trailblazer in a prejudiced industry weighed heavily on her. Friends noted that she often felt trapped between her dreams and the reality of Hollywood's limitations. Dandridge once reflected, "Hollywood is a beautiful place to be, but it has a way of crushing the spirit if you're not careful." By the mid-1960s, Dorothy Dandridge had largely vanished from major film roles. She passed away under sad circumstances in 1965, leaving behind a legacy of talent, courage, and the stark reality of a system that was not yet ready for stars like her. Dorothy Dandridge remains a poignant reminder that brilliance alone was not enough to secure lasting Hollywood fame, especially for those who face the barriers of discrimination. Carole Landis. She was radiant, vivacious, and instantly recognizable, the kind of star who seemed destined to shine endlessly. Carole Landis captivated audiences in the 1940s with her charm and energy, yet her career and life ended abruptly, leaving Hollywood shaken and puzzled. Born in Fairchild, Wisconsin in 1917, Landis moved to Hollywood in the mid-1930s with dreams of becoming a star. Her big break came with 1 Million BC in 1940, where her beauty and presence captured the public's imagination. Known affectionately as the Ping Girl, she combined glamour with a relatable, girl-next-door appeal that made her an audience favorite. Landis's rise seemed unstoppable. She appeared in musicals, comedies, and dramas, often working tirelessly to maintain her place in an intensely competitive industry. Off-screen, she was generous and approachable, winning admiration from fans and colleagues alike. But beneath the surface, pressures and personal struggles were mounting. She juggled demanding studio schedules, romantic entanglements, and the harsh scrutiny of Hollywood gossip columns. Despite her popularity, Landis felt increasingly isolated. Friends reported that she struggled with depression and feelings of inadequacy, compounded by the fear that her fame might be fleeting. In July 1948, at only 31 years old, she passed away under sad circumstances, shocking the entertainment world. A co-star once said of her, "Carole had a light that was impossible to ignore. It's heartbreaking that it burned out so soon." Carole Landis' disappearance from Hollywood was swift and tragic, a stark example of how the pressures of fame could overwhelm even the brightest stars. Her legacy endures in the films she left behind and in the poignant reminder that stardom does not guarantee peace or permanence. Gail Russell. She was the quiet beauty of Hollywood's 1940s, delicate, ethereal, and destined to captivate audiences. Gail Russell's talent promised a luminous career, yet behind her soft features was a fragile spirit, and her retreat from the spotlight became one of the era's most heartbreaking vanishings. Born in Pueblo, Colorado in 1921, Russell moved to Hollywood in her late teens. She was discovered by Paramount Pictures while working in small theatrical productions. By the early 1940s, she starred in films such as The Uninvited and Wake Island, earning praise for her understated elegance and emotional depth. Audiences adored her, and she was often described as hauntingly beautiful. Yet success brought hidden struggles. Gail suffered from intense stage fright and anxiety, which grew worse under the pressures of studio life. Alcohol became a crutch, and her fragile mental health began to interfere with her work. Despite talent that could have ensured a long career, she became increasingly unreliable in the eyes of studios. A colleague remembered, "She had a rare beauty both inside and out, but it seemed the world was too bright, too loud, and she couldn't always face it." By the late 1940s, Gail Russell had largely vanished from major film roles. Her public appearances became rare, and she retreated to private life, battling her inner demons away from the cameras. She passed away in 1961, leaving behind a small but unforgettable body of work. Gail Russell's story reminds us that Hollywood's glow often casts long shadows. And even the most luminous stars can quietly disappear when the pressures of fame overwhelm them. Barbara Payton. She was a starlet whose beauty and charisma promised a glittering future. Yet Barbara Payton's rise and fall became one of Hollywood's most cautionary tales. From glamour to obscurity, her disappearance was sudden, public, and impossible to ignore. Born in Cleveland, Ohio in 1928, Payton moved to Hollywood in the late 1940s. She quickly captured attention with her striking looks and vivacious personality, landing roles in films such as Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye, alongside James Cagney. Studios saw potential for a major career, and Hollywood buzzed with excitement over the new blonde starlet. However, Barbara's life off-screen was tumultuous. Romantic scandals, erratic behavior, and clashes with studio executives made her increasingly unpredictable. She became entangled in high-profile love triangles that fueled gossip columns and overshadowed her work. As opportunities dwindled, she struggled with addiction and financial instability, further eroding her career. A journalist once described her as a shooting star that burned too bright and too fast, capturing the intensity and impermanence of her Hollywood life. By the mid-1950s, Barbara Payton had vanished from major films, retreating into obscurity while the studios and public moved on. She lived her final years quietly, passing away in 1967 under sad circumstances. Barbara Payton's story is a stark reminder that fame can be fleeting, and Hollywood's glamour often masks a fragile reality, one where talent alone cannot guarantee survival in an unforgiving industry. Robert Walker. On screen, he could charm and terrify in equal measure, leaving audiences captivated by his intensity. Robert Walker's talent promised a lasting career, yet his sudden decline and untimely death in the 1950s transformed him into one of Hollywood's most enigmatic vanishings. Born in Salt Lake City, Utah in 1918, Walker moved to Hollywood after studying drama at the University of Southern California. He quickly gained attention for his versatility, appearing in films such as The Clock and Since You Went Away. However, it was his chilling performance in Alfred Hitchcock's Strangers on a Train, 1951, that cemented his reputation as a brilliant actor capable of portraying both charm and menace. Behind the camera, Walker struggled with personal demons. Reports indicate he battled alcohol and depression, and his once promising career slowed as studios grew wary of his instability. Friends described him as deeply sensitive, with a talent that often left him exhausted and emotionally vulnerable. Reflecting on Walker, a colleague once said, "He had the face of a boy, but the soul of a poet. And sometimes that combination is unbearable in this business." On August 25, 1951, Walker passed away under sad circumstances at only 33 years old. His career ended abruptly, leaving behind only questions about what might have been. Robert Walker's story is a haunting reminder that brilliance does not protect against the pressures of fame, and that even the most promising careers can vanish in a moment, leaving only memory and wonder. Lila Lee. She was a star of silent films whose smile could light up the screen, yet Lila Lee gradually disappeared from Hollywood as the industry shifted and personal challenges mounted. Her story is a quiet echo of the many early stars who faded as quickly as they shone. Born in Union Hill, New Jersey in 1902, Lee began performing on stage as a child and soon transitioned to film. By the 19s and 20s, she was one of the most sought-after actresses in silent cinema, starring in films like The Primrose Path and Blood and Sand. Her charm and natural acting style earned her the nickname Cuddles among fans. However, the arrival of sound films in the late 1920s disrupted many silent film careers, including hers. Though Lee made a few successful transitions to talkies, the roles became fewer and smaller. Personal hardships, including health struggles and family pressures, further limited her ability to maintain a steady career. A contemporary review once noted, "Miss Lee brings warmth and sincerity to every role, but the world of Hollywood can be unkind to those who are not relentless in self-promotion." By the 1930s, Lila Lee had mostly vanished from the screen. She made occasional appearances in small roles, but lived much of her life away from the spotlight, passing quietly in 1973. Lila Lee's disappearance reflects a pattern familiar to early Hollywood. Talent and charm could elevate a star, but changing technology, studio politics, and personal struggles could erase them just as swiftly. Judy Holliday. She was a bright, sparkling presence on stage and screen with a comedic timing that made audiences laugh and love her instantly. Judy Holliday seemed destined for lasting success, yet her sudden retreat from Hollywood left fans and colleagues wondering why such a talented star vanished so early. Born in New York City in 1921, Holliday trained in drama and music before making her Broadway debut. Her big break came with the hit play Born Yesterday, which earned her critical acclaim and eventually an Academy Award for Best Actress when it was adapted into a film in 1950. Her charm, wit, and intelligence made her a standout among her peers. Despite her success, Holliday's career was challenged by illness and personal choice. She grew wary of Hollywood's pressures and the relentless public scrutiny that came with stardom. Offers continued to arrive, but she prioritized her health and personal life, stepping away from the film world even as audiences adored her. A co-star once reflected, "Judy could light up a room, but she knew when the lights were too bright for her own good." By the late 1950s, Judy Holliday had largely disappeared from major film roles, focusing instead on theater and living privately. She passed away under sad circumstances in 1965, leaving behind a small but unforgettable body of work. Judy Holliday's story reminds us that even the brightest stars sometimes choose silence over the spotlight, and that fame is not always the path to fulfillment. Lupe Velez. She was a whirlwind of energy and charisma, known for her fiery personality and magnetic presence on screen. Lupe Velez's life sparkled with passion, yet behind the laughter and glamour, personal struggles eventually led to her mysterious disappearance from Hollywood's spotlight. Born in San Luis Potosí, Mexico in 1908, Velez moved to Los Angeles in the 1920s and quickly made a name for herself in silent films. Her vivacious style and exuberant performances earned her the nickname the Mexican Spitfire, and she became a favorite of audiences in the 1920s and 30s. Films like Hot Pepper and Laughing Boy showcased her talent for both comedy and drama. Velez's career, however, was marked by turbulence, romantic entanglements, intense public scrutiny, and the pressures of Hollywood fame took a toll. While she continued to appear in films, her personal life often overshadowed her professional accomplishments, leading to fewer leading roles and increasing isolation. Friends recalled her vivacity. Lupe had fire in her veins. You couldn't ignore her, but sometimes that fire burned too brightly for the world around her. By the late 1940s, Lupe Velez had largely vanished from Hollywood's main stages. Her later years were shadowed by personal turmoil, and she passed away under sad circumstances, leaving behind questions and the memory of a star who lived life on her own fiery terms. Lupe Velez's story reminds us that the Hollywood spotlight can be both dazzling and dangerous, and that even the most dynamic stars sometimes disappear without explanation, leaving only their legend. Howard Hughes. He was a visionary, a billionaire, and one of Hollywood's most influential figures. Yet Howard Hughes's later life became a story of seclusion and disappearance, illustrating a very different kind of vanishing from the public eye. Born in Houston, Texas, in 1805, Hughes inherited his father's tool manufacturing business, but quickly turned his attention to aviation, film, and innovation. By the 1930s, he was producing and directing films such as Hell's Angels and The Outlaw, pushing boundaries with both technology and storytelling. His name became synonymous with ambition, glamour, and daring in Hollywood. Despite his extraordinary success, Hughes increasingly withdrew from public life. By the 1950s, his reclusive tendencies intensified. He became obsessive about cleanliness and privacy, rarely appearing in public and communicating with the outside world mostly through intermediaries. While he still controlled his business and aviation ventures, he vanished from the Hollywood social scene, leaving journalists and fans perplexed. A biographer noted, "Hughes became a man who could command the world, yet feared the world itself. His disappearance was as complete as it was deliberate." For decades, Hughes lived largely unseen, his life dominated by compulsions and isolation. He passed away in 1976, leaving a legacy of brilliance intertwined with one of Hollywood's strangest vanishings. Howard Hughes' retreat reminds us that disappearance does not always mean tragedy. Sometimes, it is a personal choice to escape the very fame and pressures that once defined a life. Which of these Hollywood disappearances surprised you the most, or left you wondering what really happened behind the scenes? Comment below and share your thoughts.